Okay, you're slowly appearing. Apparently our internet here is a bit unstable, so let's make wishes that it works. Okay, so as you're all frozen and mainly blank, I'll just give it another minute or so just so that people can settle down, and then I'll guess when to start. Do you reckon time to start, Vijama? Maybe, yeah? Yeah, okay, let's start. So,
Hello, I'm aware that Vessantara's just dropped out. I think he'll just be reconnecting.
Thank you for letting us know.
yeah, sorry about that. We just dropped out here. And let's have another go. So hopefully you can see and hear me. Yeah, I can see one or two of you now. That's a bit better. Okay.
I don't know if we've got Sadarucci back yet.
Oh, is there any way we can tell whether we have Sadarucci in the Spanish translation?
I could hear her. She is functioning. Did you get that?
Okay, she's fine.
Yeah.
That's good. All right then. So, yeah, so welcome to day 5, session 4. So let's start. Where do we start? Oh yes, there were a couple of little things. First off, I mentioned earlier in the day about the web page. So there's a lot of resources there. If you want to add to them in some way, so if you're, for instance, if you've been interested in the mind training for a while and there's a book that you'd recommend, feel free to add that in. It's maybe not immediately obvious when you leave comments, but if you go right to the bottom of the page, there's a reply box, so you can put comments in there. Oh, the other thing I wanted to do was really just pass on some thanks from Adhisthana for the dana that you've given up to now. I think we're well on the way to sort of 5 figures for the dana. And yeah, it would be really great if we could get over that 5-figure number. I'm aware, some of us are in very difficult circumstances with lockdown and life turned on its head. Some of us are going on lots of retreats online, and money only stretches so far. But yeah, it's just a reminder, really, because yeah, you're a lot of very open-hearted people. So yeah, let's not forget if we wanted to make a donation or a further donation. Okay, so I've been going through the section 6, the commitments, and we're going to just do the next about 3, and then we'll be halfway through the commitments, and we'll leave it at that, and tomorrow we'll do half the guidelines of section 7. It's a bit strange, but it means that it's kind of balanced between the retreat now and the retreat in the middle of March. Inevitably, I've only got a very short period of time to look at each of these. So it's a bit like, in a way, I feel like I'm just kind of laying out the territory. And if you're interested, then you can pick up on it. You can explore. Yeah, it's a bit like the hearing part of hearing, reflecting, and meditating. So you could take any of the 59 points in the mind training and really work with it, really reflect on it. Yeah, explore it for a period of time, meditate on it, work on it in a chapter with your spiritual friends. Yeah, however you want to do it, teach it if that's your sort of thing. Yeah, so we really make it our own. Yes, so because yeah, I feel like I'm inevitably I can't sort of draw out all the practical implications of them and try and get a few main points out of each one. Yeah, so let's go on now then to number, where are we? 28, I think is the next one. Yeah, and 28 is give up all hope of results. Give up all hope. All ye who enter here, give up all hope of results.
I don't think we did 27, did we?
So the point here is if
we
27,
haven't done 27.
work on the strongest defilements first. We haven't done 27. Ooh, beg your pardon.
It's true, we haven't.
It's true. Vijayamala says it's true. It must be true. Okay, thank you very much for pointing that out. So back to 27. 27 says, work on the strongest defilements first. So what's that about? Well, it's fairly kind of obvious, isn't it? It's suggesting that whatever the klesha that's strongest in experience, that's the one that we should tackle. And it could be, you can take it either in this moment. So in this meditation, you go to work with mind training and you feel, well, okay, so what's uppermost here? And you work with that. Or it can be more generally, at this time of my life, in this current phase of my life, in this current phase of my Dharma life, what's strongest? Yeah. So when I was on 3-year retreats, say, for the first year, it was definitely craving. And for the second year, it was definitely rage. And the third year was probably all the other kleshas all kind of mixed in together. Yeah. So it's good to be aware of what our predominant tendency is. And the mind training, which tends to think in terms of going towards difficulties, suggests, okay, let's go to the thing that's causing us the most difficulty. So if it's craving or rage or whatever it is, we go for that. And we may well find that this will change over time, as it did on my 3-year retreat. We work on something and we may think, oh, I've always been a craving, a greed type. Yeah. So we really work on that and work on that. And that reduces down, and then we notice, oh, that something else has now come to the fore. Yeah. And we can also, we're a bit like layers too. So we work on one layer and then it's like another layer comes to the surface. So we also have to not have too fixed an idea about, oh, I'm like this, and so I always need to work like that. We need to be aware that our Dharma practice is having an effect and our life circumstances are having an effect. Yeah, so if we suffer some loss in some kind of way, that may bring a different emotion, negative emotion to the fore compared to when things were going well. So we go for that, and we it's like we kind of campaign against that particular klesha. We do whatever we can do, using all the methods that we know, general Dharma methods and mind training, to reduce down this klesha that's strongest. And you can say, well, why do we work that way? You know, wouldn't it be easy to pick off the easy ones and work our way up? You know, that seems like might be a good idea. And yeah, if we can do that. But the thing about the strongest one is that if we go into our experience, we may find that that's the one that's causing us most suffering, and therefore it's the one we're most motivated to work with. It's not always like that, but you know, at least it may not appear like that. Often our predominant klesha is the one that we've kind of overlooked or haven't seen the suffering in. Yeah. But when we really look, we find, oh yes, you know, this is strong, and this is actually having a big impact on my mind and my life, and maybe on other people as well. And so that motivates us. So that's the idea of that one. That's, yeah, we turn towards the difficulty and we throw everything we can at whatever the strongest defilement happens to be. Okay, so now with a sense of deja vu, 28, give up all hope of results. Yeah, so the idea of this is that we're practicing putting all our energy into the immediate situation and the practice, rather than taking part of our energy out into thinking about the future. Yeah. Sometimes we can motivate ourselves thinking, oh, you know, when this is, yeah, when I have reduced down this klesha, you know, I'll be freer, and that's motivating. But so often our practice is caught up with hopes and fears. Yeah. Is this going to go well? Is it not going to go well? Yeah. So this is encouraging us to have confidence in the Dharma. To have, even if we can manage it, to even have confidence in ourselves for once as Dharma practitioners, that if we do the practice, it will have the results, which means that we can just faithfully do the practice as skillfully and effectively as we can, and we trust that that has results. Bhante used to have this sort of image about, if you keep sort of, you know, wanting to see what the results of the practice are, it's a bit like kind of, there's a plant and you wonder, you know, how well it's growing. So you kind of pull it up to see how the roots are doing, you know, and then you kind of put it back again. It doesn't really help. Yeah. So, yeah, we do the practice with confidence in the Dharma, yeah, and confidence in our capacity as Dharma practitioners, confidence in the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, confidence in the whole tradition. And ideally, we want to give up even the hopes and fears of the good Dharma practitioner. So we're Dharma practitioners. So we want to feel that, through this practice, we'll become happier, we'll become freer, we'll become awakened or enlightened. And then there won't be any more problems. And all that looks like, well, that's the sort of thing that a Dharma practitioner should think and feel. But actually, it's still a way of perpetuating the ego clinging. We project ourselves into the future and think, will I be all right? And, oh yes, maybe I'll finally be all right because then I'll become awakened or enlightened. But it's all still part of the process of referring back to me and am I okay? Yeah. So it's a big thing to ask, but as much as possible, we do the practice for the sake of doing the practice, or we do the practice for the sake of the world. We do the practice for the sake, yes, not leaving ourselves out, but in that picture, and we trust that the results will come. Because all these expectations that we have produce, as I say, hopes and fears, and hopes and fears produce ups and downs. Looks like our hopes might be fulfilled, looks like they might not be fulfilled. Yeah, and those ups and downs actually turn against us in the practice. They don't help. Yeah. Ideally, we just practice very kind of smoothly and easily. Okay, we've decided this really is the best thing to do with our lives. We've decided, yes, we have confidence that this practice is a good practice for us. And then we just do it and do it. Yeah. And if that's too much to ask, okay, let's do it for a while and then set a time when we're going to review how it's been. But sometimes people practice in a sort of anxious kind of way, where they do a bit and look for some results and they're not sure they see any, and then they think, well, maybe it's not right. And so then they sort of half do it because they haven't got the confidence there. So then it doesn't really work. And the whole thing sort of just falls apart. Much better to really put your energy into something. Okay, and let's completely put our energy into the mind training and Tonglen until March, until the second of these retreats, and then see, did it have any effect? Just review. And that way we discover, because we really put our energy into it. So if we want to practice it with the hope, let's have the hope that turning our sort of self-referential tendency just becomes less. Yeah, that would be. And we don't need to have hopes and fears about that, because if we practice the Dharma, that's what will happen. Yeah, it's inevitable. And in a funny kind of way, we don't even do Tonglen with hopes and fears about whether it's going to benefit others. Not even that. Yeah, we do it, with the wish that it may benefit others, but not with hopes and fears about how it's going to go. We really, all this sort of concern about, all these hopes and fears about the practice are a kind of near enemy of the practice. They look like they're part of it because, as Dharma practitioners, surely we're concerned that our practice is going to get better and better in the future, but actually it doesn't help. Yeah. We want to get out of hopes and fears once and for all. Yeah, they're always connected to craving and aversion, and they're always connected to what about me? Okay. Let's do another one or two. 29. Reject poisonous food. So poisonous food is food, so it looks like should be nourishing, but it's got something in it that means that it's really not. Yeah. So we can be practicing wholesome actions, or apparently the sorts of actions that people do when they have a good motivation, but motivated by things which aren't helpful and affect the practice. So we could be motivated by our own sort of self-importance. We could be whatever, running a Dharma center, and yes, we want it to go well, but also there's quite a lot of me in it all. Yeah. So that me in it all actually gets in the way of us producing the really successful Dharma center that we want. Yeah. Another thing that some of the commentaries mention is that the food is poisoned, the practice is negatively affected by clinging to things as real. So this brings in again this whole stance of seeing things as dreamlike and exploring the nature of unborn awareness. So the practice is affected by us kind of grasping. Yeah, so as we're practicing, ideally we're working both with the relative bodhicitta and keeping that exploration of how things are alive. So we're looking into the real situation of how things are in terms of, yes, they're not as solid and as real and as stable. Problems and difficulties aren't solid, real, stable things either. The sense of me as separate from everything else is something which we're not going to find when we actually really look into our experience directly. And we have to do this real work of looking, exploring, because we can take on Dharma views, everything's flowing, everything's impermanent, nothing has any fixed essence, there's no fixed essence to me. And that goes so far, but it's not enough to produce the deep transformation that's needed. And so even our efforts to really turn outwards and help others, they're not going to go as far as they could, because we're doing it still within a context which isn't how things are. And that belief in all that solidity, and especially the solidity of ourselves and the solidity of the divide between us and others, is going to keep affecting the practice. So it's really good to if we can just keep a thread of exploration and feeling our way, exploring our way into our direct experience, getting underneath the ideas about it. Yeah, that's really going to make a big difference, and it's going to make sure that the nourishment that we get from the Dharma is going to be really, really, really satisfying rather than poisoned. Okay, I've got time to do one more. It would be good if I could, maybe just briefly. Yeah, I'm going to do the number 30. So number 30 is don't keep score. So what's this about, keeping score? It's about kind of having a long memory for ways in which people upset us, let us down, were rude to us, were mean to us, it's like we don't forget. Yeah? I mean, in a way, we shouldn't forget because we need to learn, but we don't forgive either. Yeah? And we can kind of blacklist people and never give them another chance because of something they did. Yeah? I have a friend whose father came from Ireland, and he has lots of cousins in Ireland, but he's never met any of them because something like, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago, his father and his brothers fell out and they cut off from one another. And now, even though my friend's father is dead and, 60 years have passed, the family has never kind of reconnected. It's like that sort of decision was made, right? No, that's it. So that's one aspect of keeping score. Just never, never giving this flowing, changing person that we had difficulties with another chance, not even just seeing whether they've changed. The other aspect of it is waiting for the opportunity to settle the score. Yeah, so we harbor a grudge. We talk about nursing a resentment in English. It's like you really look after it. You take care of this resentment. You keep it alive, day after day, month after month, year after year. Yeah, until there's the opportunity where you can get your own back on the person that did whatever it was, or the people who did whatever it was. Yeah, you get even, as they say in English. So you settle the score. So yeah, that's that whole kind of mindset, that whole way of approaching things. Yeah, it's got all sorts of things which are the reverse of the Dharma in it. I won't go through and list them all. Yes, our aim, as much as possible, is to be treating people equally with loving kindness, even if we feel at the moment, okay, whenever I try to communicate with this person, it goes wrong. We just seem to miss one another. We come up against one another in an unhelpful way. We may decide the most skillful thing is to withdraw from them for the time being, but we don't cut off in the sense we don't close our heart to them. Yeah? We still hold them in our heart. We still wish them well. We still hope that one day we can re-establish that connection. On the Bodhisattva path, the Bodhisattva is aiming to make and keep connections with all beings and gradually lead them towards awakening. Yeah, so we don't cut off, even if we need to cut off contact because the conditions aren't there for us to really meet in a good way. Yeah, still we do our best to keep an open heart and to wish them well, to keep that heart connection there. And in general, we're trying to break what I call the reciprocal relationship between what we're given by people and what we give back. Haven't really got time to go into this now. I wrote a book called Tales of Freedom, and there's a whole chapter in there called Beyond the Reciprocal Relationship, where I sort of went into all the sorts of ways in which our minds can kind of look at, well, so-and-so does this for me, so I'll do this for them, or they don't do this, so I'm not going to do it for them, or nobody else does this, so I won't do it either, etc., etc. All these kind of tit for tat, as you say in English, relationships where what we give is conditioned by what we get. Yeah? From a Dharma point of view, it's like we're aiming not to be conditioned by what we get. We're aiming to resource ourselves so that we can give in all sorts of skillful and effective ways. Yeah? We're not limited by what others give us, although we obviously take it into account in how we respond. Okay, So that was a quick exploration of those four. So tomorrow we'll do some of the guidelines. And now we'll meditate. So meditation, first off, a chance to relax. Finding and exploring our connection with the earth. Being aware of our posture, seeing if there's anything that would help it to be more supportive, to help energy to flow. To help us be more awake, alive. Coming into the body, how is this experience that we call the body? How is it now? Letting the awareness be full of kindness, full of sympathy, understanding, as much as possible. Now letting energy and awareness gather in our heart center. In the last session in meditation, we worked with a difficult emotion, using more of the methods of relative bodhicitta. So now if you'd like to join me, I'm going to explore a negative emotion from a wisdom perspective. So what I invite you to do is to call to mind a characteristic klesha, a negative emotion. Needn't be necessarily the most prominent one in your life. Just something that's characteristic that crops up regularly. We're going to look at it, explore it from different angles, quite objectively, like a scientist in a laboratory. But we can do this playfully and still with an open heart. So let's choose this difficult emotion. Let's imagine a typical situation which might trigger it, which might catalyze it. And let's explore and see if we can find if there's something particular about this kind of situation that's what really triggers it. Now let's let go of that situation. Let's see if we can just focus on that difficult emotion directly. How do we know it's still there? What do we feel in the body? What words and pictures are there in the mind? Let's see if we can play a little with making it stronger or weaker. What do we have to do to make it stronger or weaker? Do we have to do something in the body? Do we have to tell ourselves something? Do we have to produce pictures? How do we do it? Now let's imagine being with a Dharma friend, someone who doesn't trigger this negative emotion in us, who isn't prone, who tends not to have this negative emotion themselves. And we're going to teach them how to do it in our imagination. I know this is crazy, but if we want to help them to develop this negative emotion, what do they have to do? Is there a way they have to stand or sit? Do they have to do something with their body? Do they have to breathe a particular way? What helps produce this negative emotion? Would they have to produce a sense of this negative emotion, particularly in one part of the body, in the pit of their stomach, or their fists? What would they have to do? And to help really produce it, would there be a good story they could tell themselves, about life, about what's going on now, to produce this emotion? So let's imagine they've got the idea, the feeling of it. They know how to do it. Now can we teach them the remedy? Can we teach them what will weaken this negative emotion? What will help them step out of it, or calm it, or see through it? What can we tell them? What will help? Let's see, feel, sense that teaching on how to weaken, dissolve away that negative emotion working for them. So they become more relaxed, body changes, thinking, pictures in the mind change, heart changes. They're really relaxed and at ease. Just wishing them well. Now letting them go. Coming back to ourselves, the body, the heart, mind. How is it now? Is there any leftover tensions from the meditation? Just letting them flow into the earth. Dedicating the merits. May all beings learn to work with their heart minds. See through and dissolve all the causes of suffering. Be truly liberated. Okay, so I hope that was of some help in just exploring and objectifying some of our mental states. And tomorrow is our last day. Everything flows along. So I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And yeah, we'll round off the retreat through looking at some of the guidelines. So go really well until then.
Thank you, Vessantara. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Vessantara. Good night.
Good night.
Night. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vessantara. Night all.
Thank you. Mañana.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Vessantara.
Muchas gracias.